What's up, Refuge Nation? It's your friendly neighborhood Bob here with another Back to Basics episode. And today we are going to talk about wound packing. We're going to talk about a super simple way that you can wound pack and kind of how it works. And we're going to show you a quick demonstration of it. So to wound pack, you're going to need a couple of things. The first thing that you're going to need is your friendly, handy-dandy pair of gloves. Because if it's wet and sticky and coming out of somebody's body, you shouldn't touch that, because it's gross, right? So you'll need your gloves, and then you'll need a wound packing gauze, right? Whether this just be a compressed gauze or hemostatic impregnated gauzes, like some of the quick clot options we got down below. And then after that, you're gonna need some sort of emergency trauma dressing. For today's example, we're not gonna get into how to wrap it with an emergency trauma dressing. We're really gonna just focus on the wound packing itself, right? So what you're gonna do is you're going to take your handy-dandy gloves here because somebody's bleeding and that's bad. And you're going to put them on. You're going to take your compressed gauze. You're going to open it up. Best way to do it, slide it right out like so. All right, take that. I usually keep my plastic in case I need it later on in the medical emergency, right? And we're going to go back and forth to kind of just loosen that Z-fold gauze up. While in our hand, we're going to take a little bit here like so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tie what's called the power knot, the control knot, the pressure knot. It's a knot. It doesn't really matter what you call it. And what the main purpose of that knot is we're going to drive that towards the bleeding artery. So when we drive that into the wound, wherever our main source of bleeding is or pulsating is, if we can feel it, which we're not always able to, we're going to really drive that as deep into the cavity as we can, because that's going to allow us to start building pressure off of that knot, and it gives us a hard surface to really drive in, right? So, and then to give you an example without bleeding right now, what you're going to do is you drive that into the wound, and then you're going to pack in an up, down, left, right motion while maintaining continuous pressure on the wound. So think of it as a marching, right? So if you have 2 feet that are marching, 1 foot's always on the ground. Otherwise you're floating and that's impossible. And so the same thing here, when you're packing, you're maintaining constant pressure on that wound to not lose any of the pressure that you already created, right? Because what we're doing is we're using the gauze to create enough pressure against that artery to shut the flow of blood off and then allow for a clot to hopefully somewhat form, right? That's why hemostatic agents are so great, is because they help in the forming of the clot. Now, white page data suggests that no matter whether you use a non-hemostatic compressed gauze or a hemostatic impregnated gauze, the data, if you do the wound packing correctly, it's about the same success rate. So this is something you can train on. You can get teaching aids like Timmy or Billy the Baloney here, and he's got some bullet holes and some lacerations and such. You can also make your own with a yoga mat. You can take a dowel rod and a yoga mat and wrap it up and slice it, and you can practice packing in that. You can get focused wound cubes. We're actually in discussion right now of offering these simulated wounds right here that bleed like so that way you can learn how to wound pack at home, right? So what you'll do is when you have a bleeding vessel like so if you have an injury that's starting to bleed, we'll get some flow here. So once you see the blood starting to come out, we know that we need to pack that wound. You tie your power knot just like so, right? And we're going to drive that power knot all the way into that vessel, right? Or into that cavity, not vessel, right? And we're going to take another additional amount and we're going to start to drive in. Now you'll see that I'm keeping pressure the entire time with both hands. Something that a lot of people don't talk about is the wound channel will most likely get bigger in this process. And we're going to drive as much gauze as we can into this while trying to work through the flow, right? Take some more out and we'll drive more in, and we're going up, down, left, right. Now, if you do this correctly, your fingers will get pretty dang tired, right? See that I'm maintaining that pressure. It's going to get slippery. It's going to get wet. It's going to get hard to control. Now, most likely your casualty is going to fight at the beginning, and then they're probably going to pass out from the pain. But you're going to need a friend or a bystander or somebody to hold these people down. Now, it's getting pretty hard to push that blood through. Yeah, so we're starting to have good pressure right now, right? And I'm still able to get even more into that cavity and drive it even deeper, right? Maintaining that pressure, working that gauze into any open space that I'm allowed, right? Now, wound packing is a very challenging skill. Sometimes you gotta create, you know, a little bit of space and move the gauze around, right? Continuing to bring more gauze in. We're already using a substantial amount here. And then once you get the stoppage of flow, we don't have as much flow anymore, right? We're gonna create a little pressure pad like so, continuing to push down. We're not gonna lose that pressure at any point, right? Then at that point, we would wrap it with that ETD while maintaining a good amount of pressure, doing twists in the ETD every other wrap to decrease our surface area and increase the amount of pressure right here. And so when we undo this, we'll see there's a good amount of portion, no blood here, right? Not as heavily soaked. And then once we get deeper in there, it gets even more heavily soaked in that blood the deeper it goes, right? This is why when people tell you that you can use a tampon for massive hemorrhage control, they're wrong, because look at all that gauze that absorbed loose blood in there, right? Now we used all the way up to here, so you'll see this is all just back pressure right here against the channel versus this being actually in the cavity absorbing blood right here inside that pressure or inside that wound channel there, right? And so that's a quick look at how to wound pack, going up, down, left, right, completely filling that cavity with gauze, maintaining the pressure the whole time, starting with the power knot, and you know, just a really easy introduction to it. This is something you can definitely train at home. We recommend that you do train it at home. This would be used in the case of a junctional wound or a wound that cannot be tourniqueted, but you're having some major arterial hemorrhaging, right? So this is a back to the basics, really understanding wound packing. If you guys have more questions about wound packing, go ahead and throw them in the comments below. Let us know. We're always a resource for you guys so that you can continue to learn. Thanks so much, and carry some effing wound packing gauze.